The diamond sparkled on my finger like a promise I thought would never break. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the air smells faintly of smoke and fallen leaves. Daniel had taken me to the rooftop of his penthouse overlooking the city, and when he dropped to one knee, the world seemed to blur. He was everything a girl like me was told to dream of: wealthy, handsome, powerful. He had built his fortune from the ground up, and when he slipped that ring on my finger, I believed I was stepping into forever. But forever turned out to be much shorter than I expected, because the woman who shattered it all was the one I trusted most: my sister. Before I tell you how it all happened, let me introduce myself. My name is Camille Brooks. I'm 29 years old, and I've carried the scar of betrayal for 6 long years. This story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about betrayal at the deepest level, when the knife comes not from an enemy, but from family. And it's about karma. Because while my sister thought she had stolen my future, she didn't realize that fate has a way of balancing the scales. Before we go further, please like this video, subscribe for more true-to-life stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to the night my world collapsed. It started with whispers. Daniel's late-night phone calls. His sudden business trips that didn't add up. The way he grew colder, his kisses mechanical, his laughter forced. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was me. I twisted myself into knots trying to be more beautiful, more charming, more perfect, because that's what you do when you believe love is slipping away. You blame yourself. But the truth wasn't about me at all. It was about her. My sister, Vanessa, was 2 years younger than me, and from the time we were little, she had a way of taking things that weren't hers. When we were children, she stole toys, attention, compliments. She had the golden smile, the easy laugh, the charm that pulled people in. And me? I was the steady one, the planner, the one who held everything together while she dazzled and flitted from one desire to the next. I never thought she would steal something as sacred as love. Until the night I walked into Daniel's study and heard the truth. It was late. I had woken thirsty and padded down the hallway, passing his office. His door was slightly ajar, the glow of the desk lamp spilling out. At first, I thought he was on another business call. But then I heard it. Her voice. Vanessa. Soft, laughing, intimate. "Don't worry, Danny," she purred. "She'll never know. Soon it'll just be us." My blood ran cold. I froze in the doorway, my hand gripping the frame, my breath shallow. And then I heard his voice. Daniel. Deep. Familiar. Betraying. "You're right. Camille is safe. Predictable. But you make me feel alive." The words sliced through me like glass. Alive. That's what I wasn't, apparently. That's what she gave him. The thrill, the fire, the spark he decided mattered more than loyalty, more than love, more than me. I pushed the door open, my heart pounding so hard I could barely see. They both turned. Daniel's face drained of color, the phone clattering from his hand. Vanessa's eyes widened, her lips parting in a gasp. "Camille," Daniel began. But I raised my hand, silencing him. My voice shook, but it was steady enough. "Don't." I heard everything. Vanessa tried to step forward, her face painted with faux concern. "Camille, please, it's not what it sounds like." I laughed, bitter and raw. "Not what it sounds like. Do you think I'm stupid? I heard you. Both of you." Daniel's jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Not guilt, not even shame. Relief. As though the mask had finally cracked and he no longer had to pretend. And in that flicker, I knew the truth. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't weakness. This was a choice. He had chosen her, my sister, over me. The days that followed were a blur of humiliation and heartbreak. Daniel called off the engagement. Just like that. The invitations had already been printed, the venue reserved, my dress fitted. None of it mattered. Because he told me, with that same cold composure, "Vanessa and I are in love. I'm sorry, Camille, but you'll move on." Move on? As if I were a minor inconvenience. A stepping stone to the woman he really wanted. And Vanessa? She paraded around with her victory like a crown. She wore the ring that had once been mine. She smirked at me across family dinners. She posted photos of their lavish vacations, their candlelit dinners, their perfect life together. She didn't just steal my fiancé. She rubbed my face in the ashes. But the worst part wasn't losing Daniel. It was losing my family. My parents, always softer on Vanessa, rallied to her side. Love can't be helped, my mother said gently, as though that excused betrayal. You'll find someone else, Camille. Don't be bitter. Don't be bitter. As though bitterness wasn't the natural consequence of being stabbed in the back by blood and by love. So I left. I packed my things, moved to a smaller apartment across the city, and cut ties. The wedding venue refunded nothing. The vendors kept their deposits. I was left with bills, bruises, and silence. And for 6 years, I carried it like a wound that never closed. Vanessa had her millionaire husband, her luxury lifestyle, her golden facade. And I had the quiet ache of betrayal, echoing every time I saw their smiling faces in magazines or heard about their parties from mutual friends. But time has a way of shifting. The higher someone builds their empire on lies, the harder the fall when it comes. And as I would learn, Vanessa's empire was already cracking. Because karma doesn't forget. It waits. And 6 years later, it would come for her with a vengeance. In the weeks after Daniel left me for Vanessa, I felt like I was watching the world through glass. Everything around me looked normal, the city lights, the morning rush, the chatter of people in coffee shops. But inside, I was hollow. I moved like a ghost through my own life, carrying the weight of a betrayal I couldn't put into words. It wasn't just losing Daniel. It was knowing that the people who should have defended me, my own parents, had chosen silence. And worse, sometimes, they even chose her. The first family dinner after the engagement collapse is burned into my memory. Vanessa arrived late, sweeping in with Daniel on her arm, wearing the very ring that had once been mine. The diamond sparkled under the chandelier, mocking me with every glint. I froze when I saw it, my stomach twisting into knots. My mother gasped, clapping her hands together. "Oh, Vanessa, it looks perfect on you." Perfect. That word again. My father chuckled, raising his glass. "Daniel, welcome to the family. Officially." I stared at my plate, my cheeks burning. Not a single person at the table acknowledged the truth, that the seat Vanessa now occupied had once been mine. Not a single word was spoken about the betrayal. It was as though they had erased me from the story, rewritten history to make it seem like Daniel and Vanessa had always belonged together. And I was the outsider. The mistake. For months afterward, Vanessa flaunted her new life at every opportunity. She called me, voice dripping with false sweetness, to check in. But every conversation was the same. Daniel took me to Paris last weekend. Daniel surprised me with a new car. Daniel says he's never been happier. I wanted to scream, to ask her if she ever felt the slightest twinge of guilt. But deep down, I knew the answer. She didn't. Because for Vanessa, life was a competition. And in her eyes, she had finally won. I stopped answering her calls. But that didn't stop the reminders. Her social media was a glossy parade of wealth and happiness. Designer gowns. First-class vacations. A mansion with marble floors and glass walls overlooking the city. Every post was a knife twisting deeper, reminding me of everything I had lost. And people noticed. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years would reach out. "Wow, Vanessa really hit the jackpot, huh?" They didn't mean harm. But each comment was another cut. Because what they didn't see, what no one saw, was the shadow behind the glitter. The shadow where I stood, humiliated and forgotten. I tried to rebuild. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, volunteering for projects no one else wanted. If I couldn't win at love, I would at least win at survival. But even there, Vanessa's shadow followed me. She would stop by my office unannounced, waltzing in with her designer heels clicking against the floor, Daniel's car waiting outside. "Oh, Camille," she would say with mock innocence, "still working so hard? You should find someone to take care of you. It's so much easier." Her smile would linger just long enough to twist the knife before she swept out again, leaving the scent of expensive perfume in her wake. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I became the villain in a story where I had only ever tried to love honestly. I thought of Daniel, of how quickly his warmth had turned to ice. I thought of Vanessa, of the way she smiled like betrayal was just another game she had won. And I thought of myself, sitting in the ruins of a life that should have been mine. But here's the thing about shadows. They're patient. They wait. And though I didn't know it then, Vanessa's glittering world was already beginning to crack. Because the kind of happiness built on stolen ground never lasts. And when it falls hard. But at the time, I couldn't see that. All I saw was Vanessa, shining in the spotlight. And me, left in the dark. The first year after the betrayal was the hardest. There were mornings I couldn't get out of bed, nights I drowned in tears until sleep finally pulled me under. My body went through the motions, eat, work, sleep, but my spirit was a shell. And yet, somehow, little by little, I kept going. Not because I wanted to, but because I refused to let Vanessa and Daniel have the satisfaction of my complete collapse. If they had stolen my future, I would build a new one. Even if I had to drag myself through fire to do it. I started with work. My job at the marketing firm had always been steady, nothing remarkable. But after the engagement ended, I poured myself into it with a desperation I didn't recognize. Late nights at the office became routine. I volunteered for every presentation, every new client pitch, every project that seemed too big for one person. People noticed. "Camille, you're unstoppable," my boss said one evening after I closed a deal no one else thought possible. "Keep this up and you'll be running this place." For the first time since Daniel and Vanessa's betrayal, I felt something other than pain. I felt powerful. Money, once a source of shame after losing all the deposits for the canceled wedding, slowly became a tool for freedom. I saved ruthlessly, cut unnecessary expenses, built an emergency fund. Every dollar in my account felt like a brick in the wall I was building between myself and the people who had crushed me. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't easy, but it was mine. And that mattered more than any diamond ring ever could. But healing wasn't just about work or money. It was about finding myself again. I took up painting, something I had loved as a child but abandoned when life got busy. At first, my brushstrokes were harsh, angry, chaotic. But over time, the colors softened. The canvases began to reflect something I hadn't seen in years: hope. I joined a book club, where strangers became friends who didn't care about my past or my family's betrayals. They cared about me, my thoughts, my laughter, my presence. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to stitch myself back together. Still, bitterness lingered. Every time Vanessa's name popped up on social media, every time I heard about another lavish vacation or gala, the wound reopened. She had stolen the life I thought was mine, and no amount of self-improvement could erase that sting completely. But bitterness can be fuel. And I used it to push harder, climb higher, and prove, if only to myself, that I was more than what they had done to me. By year 3, I had been promoted twice. I bought my own apartment, modest compared to Vanessa's mansion, but filled with light and warmth and peace. Friends who visited said, "It feels like you." And for the first time in a long time, I agreed. Because for once, my life wasn't about chasing someone else's approval. It wasn't about being Daniel's fiancé or Vanessa's shadow. It was about being Camille. Of course, that didn't stop Vanessa from trying to remind me of her victory. She still called occasionally, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, Camille, Daniel and I just got back from the Maldives. You really should travel more. Camille, you'd love our new yacht. Maybe I'll invite you sometime if you're lucky." I learned to smile through it, to respond with polite disinterest. Because I knew something she didn't. Her need to flaunt, to boast, to constantly shove her life in my face that reeked of insecurity. Deep down, she knew what I knew. If a man could be stolen once, he could be stolen again. And I held on to that thought like a seed. Because seeds grow. And when karma came knocking, I would be there to watch it bloom. For now, though, I kept building. Stronger. Smarter. More resilient. Every success, every achievement, Every quiet victory was mine alone. And though the scars remained, I learned to wear them not as reminders of pain, but as proof of survival. Because Vanessa may have stolen my millionaire fiancé, but she hadn't stolen me. And that, I realized, was the one thing she could never take. For years, Vanessa paraded her life like a crown jewel. Gala photos, luxury vacations, anniversary dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. She made sure the world, and especially I, saw her perfect marriage to Daniel. But perfection is heavy, and masks can only be worn for so long before they start to crack. The first crack appeared in whispers. It was year 4 when an old mutual friend, Melissa, leaned across a cafe table, her voice low. "Have you heard about Vanessa and Daniel?" she asked. I stiffened.
No.
"What about them?" Melissa smirked. "Let's just say a word is, Daniel's been spending a lot of time with his new assistant.
Blonde. 22.
And Vanessa? She's not taking it well." I tried to hide my reaction, but my lips betrayed a small, involuntary smile. Of course. Men like Daniel never change. And women like Vanessa never think it will happen to them until it does. More cracks followed. The lavish social media posts slowed. The once daily stream of yacht selfies and diamond ring close-ups dwindled to occasional, carefully curated images that felt hollow. Vanessa's eyes no longer sparkled in the photos. Her smiles looked strained, forced. And when she did post, the comments from her so-called friends were sharper. "Looking tired, Vanessa. Everything okay? Where's Daniel? Haven't seen him in your pics lately." She deleted some of them, but not before I saw. And each one felt like a thread unraveling from the golden tapestry she had stolen from me. By year 5, the whispers turned into rumors. I heard from a colleague at work that Daniel had been spotted at a downtown bar, laughing a little too closely with a woman who wasn't Vanessa. Then another rumor, a fight at a restaurant, Vanessa storming out while Daniel sat red-faced at the table, ignoring the stares of onlookers. And then came the story that made me pause. At a charity gala, one Vanessa would never have missed in her glory days, she had shown up alone. No Daniel. Just Vanessa, smiling too brightly, clutching a champagne glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I should have felt pity. But pity is hard to find when the person unraveling is the same one who once danced on the ruins of your life. Instead, I felt something else. Vindication. The cracks widened when the financial rumors began. Daniel's business, once untouchable, started facing lawsuits. Whispers of shady deals and poor investments spread. For the first time, Vanessa's Instagram wasn't filled with lavish vacations. Instead, she posted throwbacks, recycling old photos of their perfect life. But the captions gave her away. "Missing this trip. Take me back." They weren't living that life anymore. They were pretending. One evening, I bumped into Vanessa unexpectedly at a boutique downtown. She looked thinner, her once flawless hair frizzed at the edges. She was trying on dresses, the tags dangling as though she had no intention of buying. "Camille," she said, forcing a smile. "What a surprise." I raised a brow. "Vanessa." For the first time in years, she looked small. Her eyes darted nervously, her fingers fiddling with the price tag. "So," I said casually, "how's married life treating you?" She bristled, her smile cracking for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Wonderful. Daniel and I are better than ever." But her voice wavered, and I saw the truth. By year 6, the cracks had become fractures. I got the news from Melissa again, who seemed to delight in bringing me updates. "They're separated," she said over coffee, her eyes sparkling. "Vanessa's living back with your parents for now. Can you believe it?" I could, because deep down, I had always known. Men like Daniel never change. And women like Vanessa always think they're the exception. But karma doesn't play favorites. And now, it was Vanessa's turn to feel the blade. I scrolled through her Instagram that night. The once glittering page was now eerily quiet. The last post was a photo of her alone, staring off into the distance on a beach. The caption read, "Sometimes life doesn't turn out how you planned." The comments were merciless. "Where's Daniel? Guess money can't buy happiness. Should have thought about that before you stole your sister's man. I leaned back in my chair, my chest swelling with something I hadn't felt in 6 years.
Peace.
Because the empire Vanessa built on lies and betrayal had finally collapsed. And I didn't have to lift a finger. All I had to do was wait. When I said karma doesn't forget, I meant it. By the time year 6 rolled around, Vanessa's carefully crafted empire had turned into rubble. But what happened next wasn't just cracks in her fairy tale, it was a complete collapse. And the best part? I had front row seats without ever lifting a finger. The first headline hit the local business journal. Reynolds Industries under federal investigation. Daniel's company, once hailed as a powerhouse, was accused of tax fraud and shady offshore accounts. His face was plastered on every news site, not as a success story, but as an example of greed and corruption. And Vanessa? She disappeared from the public eye overnight. The woman who once paraded her diamond rings and designer gowns suddenly went silent. No more yacht selfies. No more gala photos. Just a blank feed and whispers of humiliation. I bumped into Melissa again, somehow. She always had the latest tea. "Did you hear?" she said, lowering her voice dramatically over our lattes. "Daniel left her. Just packed up and moved out. Apparently, the new assistant is living with him now." I blinked, feigning surprise. "Really? After everything Vanessa did to have him?" Melissa smirked. "Poetic, isn't it? She stole him from you, and now someone else stole him from her." I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the taste. It was sweeter than any dessert. But the worst, or perhaps best, was yet to come. Vanessa called me. After 6 years of smug calls flaunting her wealth, her trips, her perfect marriage, she called me. Her voice was raw, trembling. "Camille, I don't know who else to talk to. Daniel's gone. He drained our accounts. I don't even have enough to pay the mortgage." I let the silence stretch, every memory of her smirking face flashing in my mind. Finally, I said, "Vanessa, 6 years ago, you told me you deserved my life more than I did. How does it feel now?" She sobbed quietly on the other end. "Please, Camille. I made a mistake. I thought he loved me." I closed my eyes, steadying my voice.
No, Vanessa.
"You thought you won, but all you did was borrow time. And karma just collected the debt." I hung up, and for the first time in 6 years, I felt free. The fallout was merciless. Daniel's assets were seized. His name became poison in the business world. And Vanessa, once the golden sister, the one my parents always favored, came crawling back home with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. The same parents who once defended her betrayal now whispered behind closed doors about her shame. The pedestal they had built for her had crumbled into dust. And me? I was thriving. My career had soared. I had been promoted again, managing an entire department. My apartment, once modest, was now filled with art I had painted myself, symbols of survival and strength. I traveled, not for show, not for envy, but for me. Paris, Rome, Kyoto. Every trip was a reminder that my life was mine alone, built without lies, without stolen promises. And everywhere I went, I carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing that Vanessa was living the consequences of her choices. The final blow came when Daniel's trial was broadcast. There he was, in a suit that no longer fit, his hair thinning, his confidence gone. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges, his empire reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. And Vanessa? She wasn't even in the courtroom. Because by then, she had been replaced by another woman. Just as I had been. Just as she always would be. I sat in my living room that night, watching the coverage on TV, a glass of wine in hand. 6 years ago, I had cried on that same couch, broken and humiliated. Now I laughed softly to myself. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge. Karma had done the work for me. And it had done it beautifully. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. No nightmares of Vanessa's smirk. No echoes of Daniel's betrayal. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes when the universe finally balances its scales. They say time heals all wounds, but I don't believe that. Time doesn't heal. What heals is rising, building, reclaiming. What heals is watching the very people who broke you choke on the consequences of their choices. And that's exactly what happened to Vanessa. 6 years ago, she had everything: Daniel's wealth, my ring, the applause of my parents.
Now?
She lived in the guest room of our parents' house, curtains drawn, whispers following her wherever she went. The woman who once flaunted herself at galas now avoided grocery store aisles for fear of running into people who knew her story. Her perfect life had burned to ashes. And I had walked out of the fire stronger. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I thought I had lost. That Vanessa had won. That the universe had handed her my future and left me with scraps. But what she took wasn't mine to keep. Because what is stolen never lasts. And what is built, truly built, can never be taken away. My career flourished. I was now a director at my firm, leading campaigns worth millions. I travel not for envy, but for joy. My art, once a private therapy, now hung in small galleries across the city. I had rebuilt myself from nothing. And unlike Vanessa, who clung desperately to Daniel's wealth and name, my success was mine. Earned.
Deserved.
Unshakable. One evening, I ran into Vanessa unexpectedly at a local bookstore. She looked tired, hollow. Her once perfect hair was dull, her designer clothes replaced by modest, worn outfits. She froze when she saw me, her lips parting as though she wanted to speak. But what could she say? Sorry? I didn't mean to steal your life. I didn't mean to laugh in your face when I wore your ring. No apology would matter. So I simply smiled, calm, steady, powerful, and walked past her without a word. Because sometimes silence is louder than anything you could say. At home that night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights. And I realized something important. Revenge hadn't been my victory. Karma had handled that. My victory was survival. It was refusing to let their betrayal define me. It was choosing to rise instead of crumble. It was building a life so full, so strong, that no one could ever take it away again. Vanessa had stolen my fiancé. But in the end, I had something she never would.
Peace.
And that, I realized, was the truest form of victory. So here I am, Camille Brooks. Not Daniel's ex. Not Vanessa's shadow. But a woman who walked through betrayal and came out sharper than steel. And if there's one lesson my story proves, it's this. You can steal someone's love. You can steal their ring. You can even steal their day. But you can never steal their destiny. Because karma always comes knocking. And when it does, it hits back harder than you could ever imagine.